Justin Diamond, Alvin, let's go.
Several high school students were being punished by their teacher after they skipped classes together. One of those high school students was called Park Sae. Park Sae was tired of his teacher who kept grumbling and scolding him and his friends. So, he poured a bucket of water that he was holding on his head. Even though Park Sae always skipped extra classes after school, he was actually a very disciplined student. At school, he didn't have any friends. In spite of that, he was never bothered by that fact. He didn't think that he needed any friends because he never felt lonely. Apparently, one of his schoolmates secretly had a crush on him. One day, she finally decided to confess to Park Sae that she had a crush on him. But unfortunately, Park Sae ignored her. He left her immediately without even saying anything to her. At a station, a high school student called Seo was harassing a beggar because that beggar touched her hand. Park Sae was at the station too at the moment. He saw Seo and that beggar. He told Seo to apologize to that beggar. But Seo ignored him and left that place right away. A few days later, Park Sae was taking the police academy test. It was a little difficult for him to take that test because his leg was injured. But despite of his injured leg, he finally managed to finish his test. Park Sae's father was called Manager Park. Manager Park was working at a company that belonged to Janga Group. One day, he was transferred to other company in another city. Because of that, Park Sae had to leave his high school and move to a new high school in that new city. Before they arrived there, they visited an orphanage somewhere. That orphanage received financial help from Janga Group. Apparently, Seo was the manager of the orphanage. From Park Sae's visit to that orphanage, Seo found out that Park Sae was a son of Manager Park. Because of that, she tried to be friendly with Park Sae. But Park Sae ignored her. He was too reserved and socially awkward to make any friends. Park Sae finally moved to a new high school. It was his first day of attending that new high school. After he introduced himself in front of the class, he walked to Seo's table and sat beside her. Turned out, Seo was also attending that high school. Gunwon, the son of the CEO of Janga Group, also attended that high school. They attended the same class. Apparently, Gunwon was a bully. Park Sae saw him bullying another classmate. He didn't like it. He approached Gunwon and confronted him about his bad behavior. But Gunwon mocked him instead. So, Park Sae punched Gunwon in the face. He didn't care that Gunwon was the son of his father's boss. Even though the teachers knew that Gunwon liked to bully other students, they didn't do anything to stop him. They were afraid of him because his father was the CEO of Janga Group. His father was called Jang Dae-hee or President Jang. He was friends with many important and powerful people in that country. President Jang heard from the school that his son Gunwon was punched by Park Sae. He said that he would forgive Park Sae and forget this whole case if Park Sae apologized to his son. But Park Sae refused to apologize to Gunwon because he believed that he didn't do anything wrong. He believed that he had to stick to his principles, just like how his father had taught him. Because Park Sae refused to apologize, his father Manager Park got fired from his job. Park Sae was also expelled from his new high school only on the first day of attending that school. In spite of that, Park Sae's father wasn't mad at his son. He invited Park Sae to have a drink with him instead. He was proud of his son because his son decided to stand up for what he believed in. He hoped that Park Sae would always be like that. A few days later, Gunwon was going to school by new car. He saw Seo and offered her a ride. But Seo refused his offering. After school, Seo was working part-time at a mini-market. While she was working, Manager Park came to that mini-market to meet her. They had a conversation outside of that mini-market. Manager Park told Seo that he wanted to send her to university and pay her college tuition. He wanted Seo to attend a good university and become a successful person. Seo was touched when she heard that. She promised that she would pay him back when she became a successful person. She promised to pay him 3 times the amount of money Manager Park gave her. One day, Seo came late to school because she forgot to bring her examination card. So, she had to return home to take it. While she was running to school, she met Park Sae there. Park Sae helped her to run. Because of that, she managed to arrive at school before the test began. He gave support and confidence to Seo before Seo entered the school building. He hoped that Seo passed her university interview and managed to attend a good university. Seo finally finished her university interview. When she came out of the school building, she saw Park Sae still waiting for her there. Park Sae decided that he wanted to be friends with Seo. He also asked her for her phone numbers. Seo was suspicious of him because of that. She warned him not to have a crush on her. But when Park Sae complimented her, she smiled and looked happy. After Manager Park got fired from his job, he decided to start a small restaurant. After that restaurant was opened, Seo often visited that restaurant and ate together with Park Sae and Manager Park. One evening, Manager Park went grocery shopping. While he was riding his motorcycle on his way home, he was suddenly hit by a car. Unfortunately, he passed away because of that accident. Park Sae was really saddened by the death of his father. Now that his father was gone, he had to live alone because he didn't have any relatives. Not long after that, some police officers were looking for Park Sae. They wanted to show him the development of his father's accident case. They said that the driver of the car would compensate him for the accident that costed his father's life. Park Sae became more heartbroken when he heard that. He was sad and upset because it looked like his father's life could be bought by money. Seo checked the document that the police officers gave to Park Sae. She found out that the car that hit Park Sae's father was actually Gunwon's car. Park Sae was furious when he heard that. He was looking for Gunwon immediately. Gunwon was surprised to see Park Sae there. Burning with anger, Park Sae viciously beat Gunwon and screamed at him. He was really angry because Gunwon had killed his father. He wanted to take revenge on him for the death of his father. He was going to kill him with a stone. Seo knew that Park Sae was going to hurt Gunwon. So, she called the police right away. Before Park Sae managed to kill Gunwon, the police arrived and stopped Park Sae immediately. Seo tried to reason with Park Sae. She said that Manager Park wouldn't have liked it if Park Sae killed Gunwon. It seemed like she managed to stop Park Sae. Park Sae realized that Seo was right. So, he cancelled his plan to kill Gunwon. The police finally arrested Park Sae for the violent assault. President Jang came to the police station to visit Park Sae. He wanted to give him a chance. He said that he would forgive Park Sae and let him go if Park Sae apologized to him and his son on his knees. Park Sae refused to apologize. He must have gone crazy to apologize to the person who had killed his father. He said that it should be Gunwon who apologized to him instead because Gunwon had killed his father. President Jang told him that only people with big ego who had ambitions and stuck to their principles. But when they got nothing out of their ambitions and principles, then they were just stubborn and reckless people. With the connections that he had, President Jang managed to manipulate his son's case. Because of that, Gunwon would be found not guilty of killing Park Sae's father. President Jang also managed to collect some important information about Seo. After that, he had a meeting with Seo in his room. He told Seo that he would give her scholarship to finance her study at university and pay her living expenses. Seo was surprised when she heard that. Not long after that, Gunwon asked his father to release Park Sae from the prison. He told his father that he was the one who should be blamed for all of this. But President Jang refused his son's request right away. He said that he wanted Gunwon to become the next president of Jenga Group. Because of that, Gunwon needed to have a clear criminal background record. Then, President Jang took Gunwon to a chicken coop. He told his son to break a hen's neck there. He told him to imagine that chicken is Park Sae. He wanted to teach Gunwon on how not to be guilty after he killed that chicken. A few days later, Park Sae's trial was taking place. Detective Byong, the person who was handling Park Sae's case, was attending that trial. He found out that Park Sae attacked Gunwon because Gunwon killed Park Sae's father. But when he told his boss about that, his boss dismissed his statement right away. He was trying to protect Gunwon. Because of that, he couldn't help Park Sae by revealing the truth in that trial. He needed to keep working to feed his family. In that trial, the judge decided that Park Sae was guilty of violent assault and attempted murder. Because of that, Park Sae had to receive a 3-year sentence in jail. Park Sae finally went to his cell. When he arrived there, his cellmates harassed him and damaged his property right away. One day, Seo came to the prison to visit Park Sae. She told Park Sae that she was finally admitted to her dream university. She also said that she received scholarship from Jenga Group because she had reported Park Sae to the police. Park Sae wasn't mad at Seo when he heard that. He didn't blame Seo for calling the police that evening. He said that Seo had done the right thing. If she and the police didn't come and stop him that evening, he would have killed Gunwon. If that happened, he would have been sent to the prison as a murderer. Then, Park Sae told Seo that he would open a restaurant after he was released from the prison. He said that he would continue what his later father was doing. Apparently, Park Sae had a crush on Seo. But Seo didn't like a poor man like Park Sae. Because of that, Park Sae was determined to become a successful and rich person. But he wouldn't forget his ultimate goal in this life, which was taking revenge on Gun-won and his father. 3 years later, Park Sae was finally released from the prison. He finally could breathe the fresh air again. While he was spending his time in the prison back then, he had several cellmates. One of his cellmates was called Kim Hee-hoon. He was a crime boss. He was also released from the prison on the same day. Park Sae saw news on television. On that news, it was reported that Gun-won had committed assault against an employee of Jangda Group. Gun-won attacked that employee just because he didn't recognize him. Because of that assault, the stock price of Jangda Group fell drastically. The public also boycotted Jangda Group. They were very angry at them. Then, Park Sae opened and read a letter from Seo. In that letter, Seo confessed that she missed him. She also said that she was currently living in Itaewon. Itaewon was a popular multicultural district in Seoul. It was known for its nightlife and trendy restaurants. There were many people, including the foreigners who came from various countries in the world, who visited that place on a Halloween night. After Park Sae read Seo's letter, he came to Itaewon to visit his old friend. While he was walking past the crowd of people there, he accidentally met Seo. Then, Park Sae and Seo went to a pub and had a drink there. Seo was still studying at the university. She told Park Sae that she planned to work at Jangda Group after she graduated from the university next year. Park Sae said that he began to like that place. Because of that, he planned to open his restaurant there. He knew that it would be difficult for him to open a new restaurant in Itaewon since there had been many restaurants there. The rent expense in that area was also very expensive. But Park Sae didn't care about that. He told Seo that he was going to start his business in 7 years. Seo was surprised when she heard that. She was getting more surprised when Park Sae told her that he would work as a fisherman who caught fish in the sea. Park Sae had no choice but to become a fisherman. There wasn't a lot of job opportunities for him because he was an ex-convict. After that, Park Sae and Seo were having fun together. Park Sae managed to forget his sad life for a while. He was very happy that evening because he could meet Seo again. While Park Sae and Seo were going to Seo's house, Seo apologized to Park Sae because she had to live off Jangda Group. Park Sae told Seo that it wasn't her fault. He said that it was her right to live a good and comfortable life. After Park Sae took Seo to her house, he said goodbye to her. He said that he had to leave soon. He didn't know when he was going to come back yet. All he knew that he had to leave now. 7 years had finally passed. Seo managed to realize her dream to work at Jangda Group. She was one of the most competent employees there. She always had good strategies and ideas to help the company. In that company, Seo had a good mentor. She was called Min Young. She was also a director of Jangda Group. One day, while Seo was walking down the street, she accidentally met Park Sae. She was touched and happy to see him again. Park Sae showed Seo that he could finally start his business in 7 years. Even though the rent expense of his restaurant costed around 200 million won, he managed to pay it. Park Sae's restaurant was called Dan Bam Pub. Beside Park Sae himself, there were 2 other people who were working at that pub. The first worker was called Sung Kwon. He was working as the bartender and waiter. Another worker was called Hyun E. He was working as the cook. Usually, before they started their day at that pub, they would do warm-up together first. The next day, a high school student called Seo uploaded a video on internet. In that video, it showed that several students were bullying their schoolmate. People were angry when they watched that video. They condemned the bullies and their actions. Seo was a social media influencer. She had hundreds of thousands of followers on her social media account. She was also a smart student with high IQ. She was good at all subjects in her school. She managed and did everything in her life perfectly. Because of the video that Seo uploaded on her social media got viral, one of the bully's parents got angry at her. She confronted Seo and slapped her face. But Seo had anticipated this. She told her best friend, Gun-soo, to record her and the bully's mother secretly. Gun-soo managed to take a video of the bully's mother when she was slapping Seo's face. The bully's mother was getting more angry at Seo after she heard what Seo had said. When she was about to slap Seo for the second time, Park Sae suddenly came to that place and stopped her. Seo used that moment to slap her back. After that, Park Sae told Seo that what she did was wrong. But Seo told him that the bully's mother had killed her father. Unfortunately, that was only a lie to save herself from Park Sae. The next day, Janga Group had a meeting. Even though Gunwon had been working at that company for years, it seemed that he was unable to give any good strategies or brilliant ideas to his company. When he gave presentation, Min Young and Soo-ah disagreed with his ideas. His father also thought that his ideas were worthless. Because of that, President Jang decided to fire Gunwon from his job. He appointed Soo-ah to replace Gunwon as the president of Janga Group's company in Itaewon. At Dan Bam Pub, Park Sae and his friends received a package of costumes. Park Sae ordered those costumes to promote his pub. Since the day his pub was opened, nobody had visited his pub. At another place, Seo was feeling bored. She complained to her best friend that this life was so boring. So, she asked Gunsu to take on a tour of the city with her. Gunsu gladly accepted her request. While they were riding their motorcycle, a boy suddenly running in the street to pick his basketball. Gunsu was surprised when he saw that. He suddenly stopped his motorcycle. Because of that, Seo was thrown from the motorcycle. Turned out, Park Sae was around that place with his costume to promote his pub. When he saw Seo was thrown from the motorcycle, he quickly ran toward her to save her. He was surprised when he found out that the person whom he had just saved was Seo. He remembered that Seo lied to him about his father's death a few days ago. Then, Park Sae suddenly passed out. When he opened his eyes, he found himself at the hospital. He saw Seo there. Apparently, he passed out because he was too tired. Gunsu told him that the costume he was wearing had been torn out because they needed to save him. Because of that, Gunsu said that he would pay for his hospital fees and compensate him for the costume. Then, Park Sae gave him a food flyer. He told him to visit his restaurant. After that, Seo and Gunsu visited a nightclub. Seo danced energetically in that club. Gunsu's friend saw her energetic dancing. He was attracted to her. He approached Gunsu and told him that he wanted to flirt with Seo. But Gunsu stopped him right away. Even though Gunsu and Seo were only friends, Gunsu actually had a crush on Seo. So, he didn't want his friend to flirt with his crush. After that, Seo, Gunsu, and their friend visited a pub that was owned by Janga Group. When they tried to enter that pub with their fake identities, Soo-ah found out that they were actually underage. So, they weren't allowed to enter that pub. Because of that, they decided to come to Dan Bam Pub. At first, Sung Kwon suspected that Seo used a fake identity. But since nobody had come to their pub, he finally allowed them to visit that pub. Meanwhile, Park Sae was strolling around the streets. He was observing the pubs and restaurants in that area. He had been studying business seriously all this time. He also read the book about business that was written by President Jang so he could learn about how to start a business from him. He realized that nobody visited his pub because his pub wasn't good enough. While he was walking, he suddenly met Soo-ah. He told Soo-ah about the problem that he faced at his pub. Even though the rent expense was really expensive, Park Sae didn't plan to move out. Then, Soo-ah saw Seo and her friends having a drink at Park Sae's pub. Since they were still underage, Soo-ah planned to report them to the police. At the pub, Gunsu's friend called Sung Kwon names because he was very drunk. Park Sae told him to stop, but he became violent instead. When Gunsu's friend was about to punch Park Sae in the face, Sung Kwon stepped in to protect Park Sae. Unfortunately, he became the one who was punched by Gunsu's friend. Because of that, Sung Kwon got angry. He punched Gunsu's friend back. He became very angry and violent. Park Sae tried to stop him, but he failed. Sung Kwon threw him to the floor instead. Hyunhee, who saw that, tried to reason with Sung Kwon. Fortunately, he finally managed to calm him down. Not long after that, some police officers came to that place. They told Park Sae that they received a report that they served alcoholic drinks to minors. Because of that, Park Sae and Sung Kwon were brought to the police station to be interrogated. The police finally decided to ban Park Sae from opening Dan Bam Pub for 2 months. They were punished because they had broken the law by serving alcoholic drinks to minors. Park Sae understood and accepted that decision. He also refused to blame anyone, including the person who had reported him to the police. Gunsu was amazed by Gunsu's wisdom and attitude. He admired him for accepting that decision without even complaining. Suddenly, Gunwon came to the police station. He had heard about Park Sae's problem. Apparently, Gunwon and Gunsu were half-siblings. They shared the same father but different mothers. After the police officer found out that Park Sae was Gunwon's schoolmate, he told Park Sae that he would reduce his punishment. Instead of being happy and thanking him, Park Sae scolded him instead. He was angry at that police officer because he wasn't being honest. He thought that the police officer didn't uphold the law and justice. Park Sae asked him to solve his case according to the law. Seo was confused when she saw that. She didn't understand why Park Sae refused the police officer's offer. She thought that it would be easier for Park Sae if he accepted Gunwon's help. Park Sae told her that he refused that offer because he didn't want it to happen again. He said that someone could change drastically if they committed crime, even if they did it only once. He didn't care if he had to close Dan Bem pub for 2 months. After 2 months of his punishment, he could still open his pub again. Then, Gunwon approached Park Sae. He tried to make him angry by mentioning about his past. He mocked Park Sae for dropping out of high school, being an orphan, and serving 3-year sentence in prison. Park Sae wanted to beat Gunwon, but he realized that violence was never the answer. Even if he chose to beat Gunwon, it wouldn't solve anything. He was determined that he would endure all of this for 6 years. After that, when the time had come, he would execute his plan. He would show Gunwon and his father how stubborn and reckless he was. A few days later, Gunsu still couldn't stop being guilty for the punishment that was received by Park Sae. He thought that it was unfair because Park Sae had to close his pub. Meanwhile, he and Seo were only punished by their teachers to run and write apology letters. Then, Seo was secretly drawing Park Sae on her sketchbook. It seemed that Seo began to have a crush on him. At Dan Bam pub, Sung Kwon was also feeling guilty for the punishment that was received by Park Sae and their pub. He suddenly had a flashback to his past. 8 years ago, he was sent to the prison. He met Park Sae for the first time in their cell. Sung Kwon didn't like Park Sae because he always saw him reading a book. He also found out that Park Sae had a big ambition. He thought that Park Sae was being silly because it was impossible for an ex-convict to have big dream and ambition. But Park Sae disagreed with him. He believed that everybody had a right to have a dream, including an ex-convict like him. Sung Kwon was annoyed by him. He didn't like his answer. So, he punched Park Sae in the face. Park Sae was angry at him. He told Sung Kwon that his dream was none of his business. Just because he was a prisoner now, doesn't mean that his life had ended. In fact, his life had actually just begun. Then, after Sung Kwon was released from the prison, he returned to his old life as a gangster. One day, Kim Hee-hoon, Park Sae's former cellmate, came to Dan Bam pub to congratulate Park Sae for his new business. Sung Kwon was surprised when he saw that. Not long after that, Sung Kwon also came to Dan Bam pub. He told Park Sae that he was tired of his life as a gangster. He thought that this life was too painful and sad for him. He said that he wanted to live a normal life like Park Sae. In the present time, after remembered his past, Sung Kwon was disappointed in himself. He thought that he was still a coward. At another place, Gun-soo was working part-time at a restaurant. After he decided to leave his house and live without his father's financial support, he needed to find money to cover his living expenses. Unfortunately, the owner of that restaurant planned to fire him. Back then, Janga Group was established by President Jang and Min Young's late father. Because of that, Min Young became the second largest shareholder at that company. President Jang also treated Min Young like his own daughter. Some people began to persuade Min Young to replace President Jang as the CEO of Janga Group. They said that it was Min Young's time to lead the company since President Jang was already too old to become the CEO. They also said that they didn't believe in Gunwon to become the next CEO. They thought that Janga Group would collapse if it was led by the incompetent Gunwon. Min Young appreciated their support, but she rejected their offer. She said that Janga Group still needed President Jang as the CEO. Janga Group wouldn't have existed and become successful like that if it wasn't led by President Jang. Time had passed. Seo had finally graduated from high school. She had reached the age of 20 now. It meant that she wouldn't have to fake her identity anymore if she wanted to enter a pub. She also had new friends. Her new friends' parents were very powerful and important people. She befriended them purposely so she could use their parents' power if she needed it in the future. Seo and her friends were having dinner together at a fancy restaurant. There were several men who joined them. Seo was bored by them. She thought that those men were too dull. Then, she remembered Park Sae. She couldn't stop thinking about him. Suddenly, one of those men asked Seo to buy ice cream with him. But Seo rejected him right away. At the same time, Park Sae was having a meeting with Suah at a restaurant. Suah said that she wondered why Park Sae had never asked her on a date. Park Sae told her that he would wait until he became a successful person. If his business became successful, then Seo would be jobless. When that time came, Park Sae would ask Seo on a date. Seo smiled when she heard that. She said that she would keep supporting Park Sae even though she became jobless. Meanwhile, Seo was being followed by the man from the restaurant whom she had rejected. That man even attacked her because he was kept being ignored by her. Seo was angry at him. So, she attacked the man back by throwing him to the ground. Then, she ran away immediately. She went to men's restroom to hide. She was glad and surprised when she saw Park Sae there. She asked Park Sae to help her. After Park Sae beat the creepy man who kept bothering Seo, he asked Seo to run away with him immediately. He also asked Seo to run away with them. Seo didn't understand what was happening, but she followed them anyway. They finally stopped running after they thought that they were safe. Seo tried to find some good excuses to join Park Sae and Seo. She said that she would help Park Sae to promote Dan Bam Club. She said that she was really good at marketing. Then, the three of them went to a restaurant. Seo began to get jealous because she realized that Seo had a crush on Park Sae. She knew that Seo offered to help Park Sae with his pub because she wanted to be close to Park Sae. She even blamed Seo for the punishment that Park Sae received. She said that it was because of Seo that Park Sae had to close his pub for 2 months. Seo asked how could Seo find out about all of those. She didn't remember that Seo was around when she was having a drink with her friends at Dan Bam Pub. Because of that, Seo believed that Seo was the person who reported Park Sae to the police. She wondered how could Seo betrayed a person who had a crush on her just because of a small pub. She believed that Park Sae would change his opinion about Seo if he found out about the truth. When Park Sae returned to their table, Seo finally admitted to Park Sae that she was the person who reported him to the police. Park Sae wasn't angry when he heard that. Instead, he told Seo that he still liked her. Even though he was a little sad, he believed that Seo had a good reason to do that. Seo didn't say anything to respond to that. She said goodbye to Park Sae and left that restaurant right away. After that, Park Sae and Seo continued talking about their business. Seo realized that Park Sae didn't have any knowledge about pub or experience working at a pub. It was because Park Sae's pub didn't have basic concept and characteristics that made it different from other pubs. Then, Seo told Park Sae that she always received good amount of money from the owner of a restaurant when she promoted their restaurant. She had also visited many fancy restaurants. Because of that, she knew a lot about restaurants and pubs. Park Sae complimented Seo for her great deal of experience and knowledge. He was drunk after he consumed a lot of alcohol. Then, he began to ramble about his painful and sad life. He hoped that if he worked hard enough, his life would turn good someday. When Seo heard that, she hoped that she could help Park Sae to make a good life for himself. She walked to Park Sae's body and kissed his lips secretly when Park Sae passed out. A few days later, Seo's mother, Young Min, had a conversation with her daughter. She advised Seo not to be easily fooled by love. She told her to think about her career seriously and start building a good career. She was aware that her daughter was very smart and talented. So, she didn't want Seo to waste herself just because of some stupid love. In this life, everybody had to make a decision for themselves, including Seo. Seo planned to decide what she was going to do by flipping a coin. She had no idea if she had to obey her mother or pursue her love. But unfortunately, before she managed to see the result of the flipped coin, her coin fell into the river. Because of that, she finally decided to do what she wanted to do. She came to Dan Bam Pub and told Park Sae that she wanted to work with him. She also said that she would help Park Sae to realize his dream. Unfortunately, Park Sae told her that he had found a new worker. Turned out, that new worker was Gun-soo. He would start working at Dan Bam Pub tomorrow. In the past, when Gun-soo was still a child, he was often bullied by his half-brother, Gun-won. Gun-won always hit him and turned him into a punching bag. In his house, Gun-soo was also ostracized by his father's family. President Jang's family hated him because he was an illegitimate child of President Jang. Gun-soo's mother wasn't a legal spouse of President Jang. But his mother also treated him like how the rest of his family treated him. She didn't care about him and always ignored him. Because of that, when Gun-soo became a high school student, he decided to leave his father's house. When he met Park Sae, he admired him right away because it was his first time to meet a real adult. Park Sae was the first adult that wasn't selfish or childish unlike any other adult whom he had met in his life. Because of that, Gun-soo decided to work with Park Sae. He wanted to have someone that he could look up to. But Gun-soo would be only working part-time at Park Sae's pub. Meanwhile, Seo wanted to work full-time there as the manager of Dan Bam Pub. But before deciding if Dan Bam Pub needed a manager or not, Seo wanted to know how the waiters served the customers there. She finally found out that the service at Dan Bam Pub wasn't good enough. Not only that, that pub also had ugly concept and weird menu. Seo said that they needed to change many things in that place. The next day, Park Sae and other workers at Dan Bam Pub started to carry out renovations in that place. They followed Seo's instructions carefully. Park Sae realized that his pub really needed Seo's help. Because of that, he finally allowed Seo to work there. He appointed her as the manager of Dan Bam Pub. Park Sae and the others were working together to repair and improve Dan Bam Pub. They changed the concept of the pub with a trendy one. With that new concept, they hoped that they could attract more costumers to their pub. At another place, President Jang planned to arrange a marriage for Gun-won. He selected a good and smart woman with a good career to become Gun-won's partner. He wanted to fix Gun-won's reputation because Gun-won was known as an incompetent and problematic troublemaker. Actually, Gun-won wanted to marry the woman whom he loved. But he couldn't do anything to refuse his father's request. Besides, President Jang knew that his son had a crush on Seo. After Dan Bam Pub had been closed for 2 months straight, Park Sae was finally allowed to open his pub again. Seo promoted Dan Bam Pub on her social media account. She told her followers that there were many interesting offers at that pub. People who saw Seo's post became curious of Dan Bam Pub. They visited that pub with their friends and family in the evening. For the first time in history, Dan Bam Pub managed to earn a profit of 3,200,000 won. Park Sae was happy when he found out about that. But Seo said that it was because of the interesting offers that they gave during the days of the promotion. After they stopped giving those offers, they had to find a way to attract the customers to their pub again. At another place, President Jang and Seo had a conversation. President Jang had treated Seo like her own daughter. Seo thanked him for helping her all this time. President Jang had never asked Seo to give her something in return. But this time, he asked Seo to do something for him. In the evening, Hyun-hee was absent from work. Because of that, Park Sae had to replace him to cook in the kitchen. Park Sae was actually good at cooking. But he asked Hyun-hee to become the cook at Dan Bam Pub because the meal that Hyun-hee made for him back then was really delicious. After they finished their work, Seo, Sung-kwon, and Gun-soo were waiting for the bus at the bus shelter. They had been waiting for a while, but the bus hadn't arrived yet. They thought that it would take a very long time for the bus to arrive there. So, Gun-soo asked them to go to a nightclub first. Sung-kwon thought that it was a good idea. But he said that he had never visited a nightclub before. Seo then taught him on how to dance attractively in the nightclub. After that, they went to a nearby nightclub together. While Sung-kwon was dancing in the nightclub, he saw a beautiful woman there. He was attracted to that woman. He practiced what Seo taught him before they went to that place. Surprisingly, Sung-kwon and that woman knew each other. That woman was actually Hyun-hee. Hyun-hee had decided to become a trans woman. Sung-kwon and the others were surprised when they found out about that. Seo asked her if Park Sae knew about this, and Hyun-hee said yes. At Dan Bam Pub, many customers complained about the food that had been served to them. They said that the food tasted bland. There was even a customer who complained that they found a hair in their food. Because of that, Seo went to the kitchen immediately and scolded Hyun-hee. She thought that Hyun-hee was too incompetent to cook. After that, Park Sae and the others had a meeting. In that meeting, Seo told them that the main problem that their pub was facing right now was the taste of the food. She also thought that Hyun-hee's status as a transgender could become a problem to their business. Seo believed that if they didn't solve those problems soon, then Dan Bam Pub wouldn't survive in the near future. Because of that, she urged Park Sae to make decision now. Then, Park Sae called Hyun-hee to their meeting. He said that starting from tomorrow, Hyun-hee would receive twice the amount of money that she received as her salary now. Park Sae hoped that by increasing Hyun-hee's salary, Hyun-hee would work harder. A few days later, while Seo was walking down the street, she suddenly met her former schoolmate. She was one of the bullies from her high school. She told Seo that she and her friends didn't graduate from high school because their video that Seo uploaded back then got viral. Because of that, they wanted to take revenge on Seo. She admitted that they were the ones who made Dan Bam Pub closed for 2 months after they reported them to the police. Seo was angry when she heard that. She violently slapped her former schoolmate for several times. She was mad because Park Sae and Dan Bam Pub had to suffer because of the punishment that they received. She now realized that Seo wasn't the person who reported Dan Bam Pub to the police. That evening, Seo did plan to report Dan Bam Pub to the police, but she cancelled her action. Not far from her, Seo's former schoolmate saw Seo and her friends drinking at Dan Bam Pub. She reported them to the police immediately. At Dan Bam Pub, Park Sae was teaching Hyunhee to cook. After Hyunhee finished cooking something, Seo would taste the meal and give honest feedback to her. After several trials and errors, Hyunhee finally managed to cook a delicious meal. Seo was really satisfied with the meal that she had made. She had also accepted Hyunhee's status as transgender now. She said that Hyunhee would become more pretty if she dyed her hair black. At another place, Seo was thinking about what President Jang asked her early. She was confused about what she was going to do. She had no idea if she had to be on President Jang or Park Sae's side. She was trying to find an answer while she was drinking alcohol. But instead of finding an answer, Seo became more mad and frustrated. Seo finally left that place. While she was walking home, she met Park Sae and other workers of Dan Bam Pub. Park Sae and the others planned to have dinner together at a restaurant. Park Sae told his friends to go to the restaurant first and find a table for them. But Seo decided to stay and wait for him. Seo was very drunk. She asked Park Sae why Dan Bam Pub had many customers lately. The truth was, Seo never cared about other people. She only cared about herself. In the past, when Seo was still a child, Seo's mother left her at an orphanage. Her mother said that she only left for a while. Seo believed in her mother. She kept waiting for her mother to come back. But time passed and she finally grew up into a teenage girl. But her mother never returned to that orphanage to pick her up. Seo's friends found out that Seo lived in an orphanage. They began to feel sympathy for her. They kept giving free food to her. Seo hated how they pitted her. She felt like she was treated like a beggar by them. She thought that they only gave her fake sympathy and not real love. She felt really lonely and unloved. So, she decided that starting from that day, she was going to love herself. Because of that, Seo grew up into a selfish woman. She always justified everything that she did, even though it was wrong. Seo told Park Sae to hate her because she had betrayed him. She would feel better if Park Sae got angry at her. Actually, Seo always looked up to Park Sae. She always thought that Park Sae was a bright person. Then, Seo was going to kiss Park Sae. But suddenly, Seo stopped her and pushed her away. She told her that kissing someone without their consent was considered as sexual harassment. After that, Park Sae, Seo, and Seo joined Sung Kwon and the others at the restaurant. They had dinner together to celebrate the success of Dan Bam Pub. Seo's presence in that dinner made the situation a little awkward. Seo was the one who recommended them to go to that restaurant. She had visited that restaurant before and rated it with 4 stars. Park Sae asked her how many stars would she give for Dan Bam Pub. Seo told him that she would rate Dan Bam Pub with 3 stars. Meanwhile, the only restaurant that she rated with 5 stars was Jangda Pub. She said that the recipes that they used for the food and drinks there were written by President Jangda himself. After Park Sae heard Seo's review on Jangda Pub, he planned to franchise Dan Bam Pub. He believed that Hyunhee was as great as Jangda Pub's cooks. He knew that it wouldn't be an easy journey, but he believed that he could realize his dream with the help of his team. In the restroom, Seo finally admitted to Seo that she had a crush on Park Sae. Seo reminded her that it was her that Park Sae had a crush on. She challenged her to compete against her to win Park Sae's heart. Seo accepted that challenge confidently. At a fancy restaurant, Gunwon was going on a date with the woman whom his father selected. When he saw the roasted chicken on the table, he suddenly became uncomfortable. He remembered about the traumatized incident that happened to him in the past. In that incident, his father forced him to break a chicken's neck while he was crying uncomfortably. In President Jang's room, Seo saw a picture of President Jang with Gunwon and Gunsu. She found out that Gunsu was the second son of President Jang. She told President Jang that his second son was working at Park Sae's restaurant. Not long after that, Gunwon also came to that room. Then, the 3 of them had a meeting. Seo reported to President Jang about the reason why Dan Bam Pub had many customers lately. She said that it was because Dan Bam Pub had a great manager. She told him about Seo. Even though Seo was only 20 years old, she was really great at analyzing the market and making important decisions. Seo also told President Jang about what kind of person Park Sae was. She said that even though Park Sae was a soft-hearted person, he was actually really strong. He was highly respected by all workers at Danbam Pub. Seo believed that Danbam Pub could become more successful in the future. President Jang was concerned when he heard that. He became even more concerned after Seo told him that Park Sae planned to franchise his business. At another place, Min Young was spying on President Jang. She found out that President Jang was watching Park Sae and Danbam Pub secretly. At home, Seo's mother finally found out that her daughter was working at a restaurant. She found out about it after she saw Seo's post on social media. She was really angry because of that. When Seo was home, Young Min scolded her immediately. Young Min thought that Seo wasn't being rational. She knew that her daughter made that decision only out of stupid love. But Seo confidently told her that she was going to get both love and success because she was special. She believed that she could get anything she wanted in this world because she was very smart. But Young Min didn't care about that. She told her daughter to leave her house. While Park Sae was walking down the street in the middle of the night, he accidentally met Seo. Park Sae told her that he knew that she had been admitted to a university. But Seo chose to work at Danbam Pub instead. Despite Park Sae knew about that fact, he didn't try to stop Seo working at his pub because he needed her there. Seo's mother wanted Seo to work at a big company because Seo was really smart and competent. It meant that if Seo kept working at Danbam Pub as the manager, it was possible that Danbam Pub would become a big company too someday. And it was Park Sae's dream to make Danbam more successful than Jangda Group. Seo smiled when she heard that. She promised that she would help Park Sae to realize his dream. The next morning, Hyunhee came to Danbam Pub with her new look. She listened to Seo's suggestion to dye her hair black. Her co-workers complimented her new appearance. They thought that the black hair suited her well. That day, Danbam Pub was looking for a new employee. A beautiful young woman came to that place to apply for a job. Sung Kwan was happy when he saw her there. He was amazed by her beauty. There were many people who came to Danbam Pub that day to apply for a job. Out of all applicants, Seo decided to hire a black man called Tony Kim. She thought that Tony would be useful for Danbam Pub because he could speak English. They wouldn't have any trouble in communicating with the customers if the foreigners visited their pub. A few days later, Seo called her friend to register Danbam Pub as a participant in a show. That show would be broadcasted by a television channel. While Seo was talking to her friend on the phone, Gunsu accidentally found the sketch of Park Sae that was made by Seo. Gunsu realized that Seo had a crush on Park Sae. At another place, Park Sae met with Seo. Seo told Park Sae that she would continue working at Jangda Group. Because of that, she asked him to stop having a crush on her starting from that day. In the evening, Park Sae visited a television station building. Seo managed to register Danbam Pub in the show that was going to be broadcasted by that television station. The name of that show was The Best Pub. When Park Sae entered a room, he saw Gunwon there. Because Gunwon didn't like Park Sae, they finally decided to remove Danbam Pub from the list of the participants in their program. After that, Gunwon teased Park Sae by telling him that Seo was having difficult time at their office because of him. He said that President Jang always tested Seo's loyalty to their company by using Park Sae. President Jang wanted to know if Seo would betray him for Park Sae or not. Gunwon also said that his father had approved his relationship with Seo. Then, Park Sae returned to Danbam Pub. After he heard what Gunwon told him, he couldn't stop thinking about Seo. He thought that Seo had decided to betray him and side with Jangda Group. Seo realized that Park Sae had so many thoughts in his head. So, she asked him to take a leisurely walk with her. While they were strolling around the street, they accidentally met Seo. Usually, Park Sae was very friendly with Seo. But this time, he was being so cold to her. He just told her to be careful when she was going home. Then, he left her right away. When Seo saw that, she realized that Park Sae really loved Seo. Then, she told Park Sae that it wasn't Seo who reported Danbam Pub to the police. It was her former schoolmate who wanted to take revenge on her. After Park Sae heard that, he immediately returned to the place where he and Seo met Seo early. He wanted to talk to Seo. Luckily, Seo was still there. Park Sae approached her and asked why she lied to him. He apologized to her because he had made her have a difficult time at her office. Whatever Seo was going to do, she had made sure that Park Sae was going to be fine. Park Sae didn't want to see Seo suffer anymore. So, he was determined to destroy Jangda Group to end her suffering soon. If he destroyed Jangda Group, Seo would also become jobless. Sae remembered his promise to ask Seo on a date when she became jobless. Then, Park Sae called someone on the phone. He asked him about his investment. Apparently, Park Sae had been investing in Jenga Group for 8 years. Park Sae's friend told him that he had earned 1 billion won from his investment. Park Sae told him to invest all of those money in Jenga Group again. The next day, President Jang found out that there was Park Sae's name on the list of Jenga Group's shareholders. He was surprised when he found out that Park Sae had been investing in his company for 8 years. Park Sae began to invest in Jenga Group when the stock price of Jenga Group fell drastically because of the violence case that was committed by Gunwon. President Jang finally decided to visit Dan Bam Pub. He went to that place with Seo and Gunwon. He came to Dan Bam Pub to talk to Park Sae. Then, President Jang, Park Sae, Gunwon, and Seo had a meeting. Before they began their meeting, President Jang ordered some food first. Gun-soo was the one who served the food to them. When President Jang saw his second son there, he told him that he didn't belong to that place. Gun-soo then asked him where he actually belonged. Unfortunately, his father couldn't give him the answer. After that, President Jang asked Park Sae about his investment in his company. He asked why he invested in Jenga Group 8 years ago. Park Sae told him that he believed that President Jang could make Jenga Group become successful again. He believed that he would make more profit if he invested in Jenga Group. He wanted President Jang to believe that he was only looking for profit and money by investing in his company. He said that the profit was also the reason why he invested 600 million won in Jenga Group this morning. But President Jang was still bothered by the fact that Park Sae invested that much money in his company. After President Jang finished eating his food, he began to rate and review the food at Dan Bam Pub. He said that with that kind of food, Dan Bam Pub could never compete with Jenga Pub. So, he could relax now because turned out Park Sae wasn't worth it to be considered his enemy. He told Park Sae to just give up and live a normal life. But Park Sae refused to give up. He wouldn't give up until President Jang apologized to him on his knees and paid for everything that he did to him in the past. Before President Jang left that place, he told Park Sae that a tiger didn't proclaim its tigerhood, it pounced. After that, Park Sae told Seo that he was going to make his first attack from behind. Back then in high school, Gunwon liked to bully his classmate. The victim of his bullying was called Lee Ho-jin. Lee Ho-jin had grown into an adult now. He was the person whom Park Sae entrusted with managing his investment in Jenga Group. A few years ago, while Park Sae was still in the prison, Lee Ho-jin visited him in the prison. He told Park Sae that he wanted to take revenge on Gunwon. He was sick and tired of being bullied by Gunwon for 3 years. Ho-jin planned to study finance at university. He knew about Park Sae's plan to destroy Jenga Group by starting a restaurant that was more successful than Jenga Pub. Because of that, he offered himself to help Park Sae to realize his plan. After Park Sae was released from the prison, he used his father's funeral money to invest in Jenga Group. He trusted Ho-jin to manage his investment in that company. A few days ago, Park Sae met with Min Young. Apparently, Park Sae's father was Min Young's mentor back then. Min Young really respected Manager Park. But in spite of that, it didn't mean that she would automatically respect Park Sae. Apart from helping Park Sae to manage his investment, apparently Ho-jin also helped Min Young to manage her money. So, Ho-jin had a close relationship with Min Young. That was why he could help Park Sae to arrange a meeting with Min Young. Park Sae wanted to meet Min Young because he wanted to work together with her. He offered to help her to become the CEO of Jenga Group. But Min Young rejected his offer right away because Park Sae was just a nobody who didn't have any power or influence. But then, she decided to give him a chance. She said that she would accept Park Sae's offer if Park Sae could make President Jang visit and eat at his restaurant. It would be really difficult for Park Sae to do that because President Jang always visited and ate at fancy restaurants. But that day, Park Sae managed to make President Jang come to Dan Bam Pub and eat the food that they served there. Because of that, Min Young had to keep her promise. She finally agreed to work together with Park Sae. Park Sae was really happy with their partnership. He knew that he would benefit from their partnership because Min Young was a very powerful person in Jenga Group. She was the director and the second largest shareholder of that company. But unfortunately, President Jang found out about Park Sae and Min Young's partnership. His subordinate managed to follow Park Sae and Min Young and took their picture secretly. After that, President Jang called Gun-soo and told him to meet him. Gunwon was surprised when he saw Gun-soo there. He was afraid if his father decided to choose Gun-soo to become the next CEO of Jenga Group. Apparently, President Jang wanted to meet Gun-soo because he wanted to send him to study abroad. Even though Gun-soo was only his illegitimate child, he still wanted Gun-soo to become a successful person like him. He believed in the saying that said, "The strong prey on the weak." But Gun-soo disagreed with his father's principle. He wanted to know what really happened between his family and Park Sae instead. But his father refused to give him the answer. So, Gun-soo left that place right away. One day, some foreigners visited Danbam pub. All workers there were having trouble in communicating with them because they couldn't speak English, including Tony. Apparently, Tony had been living in South Korea for only 1 year. And before he lived in South Korea, he lived in France. That was why he didn't understand English. Hyun-hee thought that Seo was going to fire Tony when she found out that Tony couldn't speak English. At another place, Gun-soo asked why Seo decided to work at a random restaurant like Danbam pub instead of studying at university. Seo told him that she worked there because she had a crush on Park Sae. She said that she knew that Gun-soo had a crush on her. But sadly, Gun-soo was only a coward. He didn't have any courage to confess her feelings to Seo, let alone to become the next CEO of Jangda Group. Seo said that if Gun-soo really wanted her to become his girlfriend, then he needed to become the next CEO of Jangda Group first. But she quickly said that she was only kidding. After that, while Park Sae was about to go to another town, Seo called and ran toward him. Seo said that she wanted to go with him. Park Sae finally let her go with him. While they were inside of the bus, Park Sae told Seo about the story of his sad life. He said that he dropped out of high school, his father had passed away, and he spent 3 years in jail. After a while, Park Sae and Seo finally arrived at the house of Detective Byong. Detective Byong lived alone with his daughter. His daughter was called Hye-won. Detective Byong had resigned from his position as a police officer. He worked as a distributor who supplied goods to Danbam pub now. Park Sae came to his house to ask for his help. He asked him to become the witness for the criminal case that he was dealing with in the past. He needed Detective Byong's testimony to destroy Jangda Group. Detective Byong said that his daughter would live alone if he returned to the police. He couldn't let her daughter live alone. So, he had to refuse Park Sae's request. In the evening, because it was raining, Park Sae and Seo had to spend the night at Detective Byong's house. Seo put her head on Park Sae's lap. She was sad when she noticed that there were many scars on Park Sae's hand. Then, she cried. Park Sae tried to calm her down. He said that he got those scars when he built his restaurant. Seo realized that she really admired and loved Park Sae. It wasn't a puppy love like what she experienced before, but a true love. She was sure about it because she could feel it. She felt Park Sae's pain and sadness. She cried for him because she felt his pain. The next day, Seo came to Danbam pub with an empty bucket. She asked Park Sae to give her a bucket of ice. Suddenly, Park Sae had a problem. He found out that the building that he used to open Danbam pub had been sold by its owner. The new owner of that building sent a document to Danbam pub. In that document, he said that he would charge Park Sae with higher rent expense. Park Sae and other workers of Danbam pub got frustrated because of that. They became even more frustrated when they realized that the contract of that building was going to end in 3 months. In the agreement, it was stated that they needed to leave that building once the contract ended. The new owner of that building said that he was going to use that building to open his business. Then, Park Sae decided to call the new owner of that building. He thought that he could reason with him. But unfortunately, when the owner of that building answered his call, Park Sae found out that he was President Jang. President Jang made his first move to attack Park Sae. He asked Park Sae to meet him at his office. Seo was really mad when she found out that Jangda Group was behind all of this. She was tired and sick of them. She didn't understand why Jangda Group was obsessed with Park Sae. She scolded Seo, the employee of Jangda Group, because she came to Danbam pub to ask for a bucket of ice. She also scolded Gun-soo, the son of the CEO of Jangda Group, because he worked at Danbam pub. Park Sae was mad with Seo's childish behavior. The situation became worse and put everyone in bad mood. Seo, Seo, and Gun-soo finally left that place. After that, Gun-won asked Seo to go to the movie theater with him. But Seo refused him right away because she hated Gun-won. She hated Gun-won because Gun-won had killed Manager Park, Park Sae's father. Seo really missed Manager Park. He thought of him as a father. Park Sae finally came to President Jang's office to meet with President Jang. Even though President Jang had bought the building that was used by Danbam pub, he realized that Park Sae wouldn't give up just like that. He knew that Park Sae would move to a new place and open Dan Bam Pub there. But he threatened Park Sae that whenever he moved to, he would buy the building that he used to open Dan Bam Pub. Then, President Jang asked Park Sae again to apologize to him on his knees. He said that if Park Sae did that, he would stop bothering him and end their feud. Park Sae refused him right away. He must have gone crazy to apologize to a person who had killed his father and sent him to the prison. Park Sae said that if President Jang wanted to end their feud, then he should be the one who apologized to him on his knees. The next day, Gun-soo asked why Seo kept ignoring him. Seo said that she didn't want to befriend him anymore because he was a part of Janga group. Gun-soo then forced her to tell him about what actually happened between his family and Park Sae. After that, the workers of Dan Bam Pub went out for dinner at a restaurant. They wanted to relax and forget their problems for a while. Sung Kwon thought that it was boring. He suggested them to go to the nightclub instead. While they were heading to the nightclub, Park Sae suddenly stopped and told them to go to the nightclub first. He wanted to talk to Gun-soo alone. He noticed that Gun-soo seemed so unhappy all evening. Gun-soo told Park Sae that he knew about what actually happened between his family and Park Sae. He felt really guilty for what his family had done to Park Sae. Park Sae told him that he didn't need to worry about that because it was a battle between him, President Jang, and Gun-won only. Then, Park Sae hugged Gun-soo. He hoped that they could be close to each other someday. At the nightclub, when Seo and the others tried to enter the nightclub, the bouncer didn't allow Tony to enter because he was a black man. Tony told that bouncer that he was Korean because his father was Korean. He had been also living in South Korea for a year now. But Seo told him that he was a black man because he looked like a black man. Tony was mad at her when he heard that. He finally left them and that nightclub. Park Sae was also mad when he found out about that. He left that nightclub and vandalized the wall of that nightclub. He called them racist. At another place, Gun-soo was thinking about leaving Dan Bam Pub. He planned to ask his father to leave Park Sae alone so Dan Bam Pub didn't have to move to another place. Seo was really happy when she heard about his plan. The next day, Park Sae met with Min Young. He told her that he planned to withdraw some money that he had invested in Janga Group. He wanted to use that money to rebuild his restaurant. Min Young thought that Park Sae's business was very risky. She said that she could help Park Sae to destroy President Jang. She suggested him not to involve Dan Bam Pub in this problem because it concerned the lives of the people who worked there. When Park Sae returned to Dan Bam Pub, Seo told him that Gun-soo wanted to talk to him. She said that Gun-woo wanted to leave Dan Bam Pub and she agreed with it. She also said that Gun-soo planned to reason with his father so Dan Bam Pub didn't have to move to another place. If Gun-soo managed to do it, then all of their problems would be solved. Suddenly, Park Sae rose from his chair and got rid of Seo's name tag. He knew that Seo actually really cared about him and didn't want to lose a lot of money. But he was mad at her because she was being selfish and rude now. He thought that it was not right to fire Gun-soo for their personal purpose. Gun-soo did nothing wrong. Park Sae also liked Gun-soo. He said that there was no other solution for him but to buy a building to open Dan Bam Pub. After that, Seo met with Soo at a cafe. She told her about what happened at Dan Bam Pub that morning. Soo smiled when she heard that. She advised her not to rebel against Park Sae. If Seo wanted to side with Park Sae, then she had to be on his side. Soo said that Park Sae had his own principles so nobody could change his mind. If Seo refused to be on Park Sae's side, then she would end up like Soo, who was not siding with Park Sae. At another place, Tony was looking for his father. He came to the police station to find his father. At Dan Bam Pub, Sung Kwon and the others read a viral article on internet about a racist nightclub in South Korea that banned black men from entering their nightclub. People were furious when they read that article. Apparently, that article was secretly written by Seo. Seo said that starting from that day, she would be on Park Sae's side no matter what happened. She said that she would fight anyone who disturbed Park Sae. Tony told them that he was looking for his father. He said that if he managed to find his father, he could obtain South Korean citizenship. Seo told him that she would help him to find his father. With that being said, the situation at Dan Bam Pub became normal again. Park Sae was proud of Seo. He took Seo's name tag and put it on Seo's clothes again. At his office, President Jang's subordinate told President Jang that Park Sae had bought a building to open Dan Bam Pub. President Jang was surprised when he heard that. It meant that he couldn't disturb Park Sae anymore. Dan Bam Pub finally moved to a new place. Seo and other workers of Dan Bam Pub were working together to carry out renovations in that new building. They gave the food flyers to everyone who was walking past their building. But unfortunately, there was a rumor that said that Dan Bam Pub's new neighborhood was cursed. It was said that all businesses in that place were doomed to fail. In the evening, Park Sae met with Min Young. He told Min Young that the main reason for him to become a powerful person was not only to take revenge on President Jang and Gunwon. He said that he also wanted freedom and security. He wanted to become a powerful and successful person so people would respect and believe in him. It would be easier for him to protect people whom he loved if he was a powerful and successful person. And the most important thing was, he wouldn't need to pay for believing in his own principles. Min Young agreed with what Park Sae had said. She said that Park Sae was not alone. She said that she would help Park Sae to realize his dream. The next day, Seo went live on social media. She wanted to promote Dan Bam Pub that had been relocated to a new place to her followers. At another place, President Jang became a keynote speaker in a seminar. In that seminar, he gave a lecture about how to become a successful businessman like him. Seo was one of the participants who attended that seminar. In the question and answer session, Seo raised her hand and asked a question to President Jang. She asked if Jangda Group used to be a small business, would it mean that other small businesses out there could become successful like Jangda Group, or even become more successful than Jangda Group? After all, business was all about competition. President Jang said that he was still strong and powerful. So, it would be impossible for small businesses out there to become more successful than Jangda Group. After the seminar was over, President Jang asked Seo to meet with him. President Jang told Seo that he wanted to hire her as his employee. But unfortunately, Seo refused his offer right away. It was obvious that President Jang wanted to hire Seo just because of Park Sae. He knew that Seo was a great manager and the key of Dan Bam Pub's success. Seo said that if President Jang really wanted her to become his employee, he could give her another offer someday. A few days later, Park Sae was thinking about giving a name of his company. When he returned to Dan Bam Pub, he gathered all workers of Dan Bam Pub in a meeting. All of them agreed that they should name their company Itaewon Class. Itaewon Class meant freedom. They decided to use the acronym of it so people wouldn't think that their company was an exclusive company that only operated in Itaewon. Not long after that, Byong and his daughter visited Dan Bam Pub. Byong came to that place because he wanted to talk to Park Sae. Suddenly, Byong's daughter, Haewon, was gone missing. Seo and the others were looking for her immediately. Apparently, Haewon got lost somewhere after she followed a cat. She met Min Young and asked her to help her. She asked her to lend her phone so she could call his father. After Byong received that call, he came to that place right away. He was happy because he could see his daughter again. Park Sae was surprised when he saw Min Young there. Min Young told him that she was on her way to Dan Bam Pub. While the four of them were heading to Dan Bam Pub, Byong realized that there was someone who was watching and following them. So, he attacked that man immediately. He tried to catch him, but that creepy man managed to run away from them. But luckily, Byong managed to get his camera. When they returned to Dan Bam Pub, they checked that man's camera right away. They realized that President Jang was the one who ordered that man. It meant that President Jang had been watching them all this time. President Jang's subordinate told President Jang that Park Sae had found out that he was watching him. But he didn't care about that. He still wanted to target Seo. He wanted Seo to leave Park Sae. He thought that Seo wasn't compatible with Park Sae because Seo reminded him a lot of himself. Secretary Kim told Gunwon about what his father thought of Seo. He suggested Gunwon to get Seo so he could fix his bad reputation. He said that it would be easier for Gunwon to gain his father's trust if he had good reputation. At Dan Bam Pub, Park Sae was unhappy because there hadn't been many customers who visited his pub lately. He thought that nobody came to Dan Bam Pub because it was located in a remote area. There was only an old lady who came to that place every night to eat. She was called Grandma Soon Rai. The next day, Park Sae helped the owners of the cafes in that neighborhood to redecorate their cafes. Seo was confused when she saw that. She didn't understand why nobody came to Dan Bam Pub. She thought that everything in Dan Bam Pub was already perfect. There was nothing that needed to be improved from Dan Bam Pub. Park Sae thought that it was because that neighborhood was too dull and quiet. Because of that, he wanted to liven up the atmosphere there. That was why he helped the owners of other cafes to redecorate their cafes. But Seo disagreed with him. She said that it wasn't the reason why nobody came to their cafe. Gunsu tried to calm them down. He said that teammates were supposed to understand each other. If they wanted to have a good team, then they should listen to each other. He said that it costed nothing for Park Sae to try to understand Seo's perspective and vice versa. In the evening, Park Sae and Seo went to a restaurant. Seo asked Park Sae about their relationship. She asked what they actually were. She didn't understand why Park Sae never confessed his feelings to her if he really liked her. Park Sae said that it was up to Seo to define their relationship. At another place, Grandma Sunrai was collecting debts from people who hadn't paid the money they owed. Suddenly, she was surprised when she saw many visitors visiting the nearby restaurant. The owner of that restaurant told her that many people came there since Park Sae redecorated her restaurant. She said that it wasn't only her restaurant that Park Sae redecorated, but also other restaurants and cafes in that neighborhood. When Grandma Sunrai heard that, she remembered about someone. President Jang asked Byong to meet him in his office. He asked Byong to become a distributor for Janga Group. He said that if Byong decided to work at his company, then he should stop working for other people, including Dan Bam Pub. Byong read the employment contract that President Jang gave him and thought that it was really interesting. But unfortunately, he refused President Jang's offer right away. He said that he couldn't stop working at Dan Bam Pub because he owed Park Sae. What he owed to Park Sae was the car accident that involved Gun-won and manager Park a few years ago. President Jang was surprised when he heard that. In the evening, Gun-won came to Dan Bam Pub. He wanted to talk to Seo. He offered her many interesting offers, so she wanted to work at Janga Group. He even said that he would pay her 250 million won if she wanted to work with him. After Seo heard that, she began to pretend like she hated Park Sae. She also pretended like Janga Pub was so much better than Dan Bam Pub. She complimented and called Gun-won great because of his impunity. She kept talking and talking until Gun-won was willing to tell her about the car accident that killed Park Sae's father. She did that because she needed Gun-won's confession. Apparently, she had been secretly recording their conversation all this time. Then, she made Gun-won angry by insulting him. Gun-won tried to attack her right away. Seo smiled when she saw that. She wasn't kidding when she said that she would destroy anyone who disturbed Park Sae. Gun-won was really angry at her. He chased Seo immediately and attacked her until she fell to the ground. Seo cried and asked people around them to help her. Gun-won was afraid if those people helped Seo. So, he took his wallet and threw his money to the street. Those people chose to pick up those money instead of helping Seo. Not long after that, Park Sae came to that place. He punched Gun-won in the face. The police officers also came to that place. They brought Gun-won to the police station with them. The next day, there had been many news about the assault that Gun-won committed last night. Because of that assault, people began to talk about the fatal car accident that involved Gun-won a few years ago again. Janga Group was pressured by that news. That news really ruined their good reputation. Because of that, President Jang was furious at Gun-won. He screamed at him and slapped his face. While Min-young was heading to President Jang's office, she saw Gun-won there. She tried to cheer him up. She told him not to worry because the company would take care of this problem. After that, President Jang and Min-young had a conversation. President Jang told Min-young that he was confused. He had no idea if he had to get rid of his son to save the reputation of the company or choose his family. Min-young suggested him to get rid of Gun-won so they could save the reputation of Janga Group. She said that it was very important for them if people believed in them again. After that, Park Sae, Seo, Min-young, and Ho Jin had a meeting at a cafe. In that meeting, Seo suggested that if Min-young really wanted to become the CEO of Janga Group, then she needed to take action now. She said that it was the perfect time for her to take action. Because of the news about the assault that was committed by Gun-won, the stock price of Janga Group fell drastically. The shareholders of Janga Group would think that it was inappropriate for President Jang's family to become the executive at that company again. But Seo was aware that President Jang was the face of Janga Group. So, before Min-young took any action to become the CEO of Janga Group, she had to do two important things first. If she didn't do those things, then she would be in trouble. The first thing that Min-young needed to do was to convince Byong to become the witness for the fatal car accident case that involved Gun-won. Min-young and Park Sae then went to Byong's house. But when they arrived there, Byong told them that Haewon was gone missing. He said that before she was gone, he told his daughter about the fatal car accident that killed Park Sae's father. After Haewon heard that, she was disappointed in his father and ran away from home. Min-hyung and Park Sae then helped Byung to find Haewon. After they were looking for her for a while, they finally managed to find her. Haewon said that she was disappointed in her father because her father didn't help Park Sae back then. Min-hyung told her that not everybody was willing to admit that they were wrong and took responsibility for the mistake that they had done. So, Haewon's father was actually a good person because he wanted to admit that he had made a mistake and wanted to take responsibility for it. Byung agreed to become the witness for the fatal car accident case that killed Park Sae's father. Gunwon finally had to attend the trial to give testimony about the car accident that involved him a few years ago. But he wasn't sent to the prison. Then, the second thing that Min-hyung needed to do was to make sure about President Jang's decision. It was important for them to know if President Jang decided to get rid of Gunwon to save the reputation of Jangda Group or to protect Gunwon. They needed to know this to make their next move. If President Jang decided to get rid of Gunwon to save the reputation of Jangda Group, then they had to cancel their plan. The shareholders of Jangda Group would be fond of him because of his decision. Park Sae believed that President Jang would get rid of Gunwon, but Min-hyung said that she needed to make sure about it first. The judge decided that Gunwon was innocent because there wasn't any strong proof. In President Jang's office, President Jang and Seo had a conversation. Even though Gunwon was found not guilty, Seo suggested that President Jang fired his son to secure his position at Jangda Group. It could also save the reputation of Jangda Group because public didn't trust Gunwon anymore. President Jang used to live in poverty. He worked so hard to become a successful businessman so his family, especially Gunwon, could have a nice and comfortable life. So, he would be really sad if he decided to get rid of Gunwon. Min-hyung found out that President Jang finally decided to choose Gunwon. So, she started working on her plan. She gathered all shareholders of Jangda Group and asked them to send their proposals for the removal of President Jang. At another place, Gun-soo was also thinking about this problem. After all, President Jang was his own biological father. The feud between his father and Park Sae had never affected his relationship with Park Sae all this time. But because of this problem, the relationship between them began to change. In President Jang's office, Gunwon asked his father about the plan to remove him as the CEO of Jangda Group. President Jang told him not to worry about him and just worry about himself. Then, for the first time in his life, he hugged his son. Gunwon was surprised and touched by that. The next day, President Jang held a press conference. In that press conference, he apologized to the public and confessed all crimes that Gunwon had committed. He also admitted that Gunwon had paid someone to free himself from being punished for the fatal car accident that he did a few years ago. He promised that he would make Gunwon take responsibility for his mistakes. It meant that President Jang decided to get rid of Gunwon. Because of that, the proposals for the removal of President Jang were denied. As the initiator of those proposals, Min-hyung was going to be punished by being moved to Jangda Group's company in Panji. Park Sae had to find another way to destroy President Jang. Even if he didn't have a chance to win, he would still have strong will and high determination to destroy President Jang. Besides, it wasn't him who lost this time, but Min-hyung. Min-hyung said one of the reasons why Jangda Group could be successful like today was their recommended food. Jangda Group claimed that President Jang was the one who made that recipe. But the truth was, that recipe was made by Manager Park Sae's father. President Jang bought that recipe from Manager Park. He paid that recipe with a watch. From now on, Min-hyung entrusted Park Sae with the mission of destroying President Jang. At the court, the judge decided to give Gunwon a 7-year sentence in jail. Park Sae wasn't satisfied yet because President Jang was still free. He told President Jang that it was going to be his turn next. President Jang smiled when he heard that. He said that he considered Park Sae his enemy now. One day, Park Sae received a call from a television channel. They said that they wanted to invite Dan Bam Pub as a participant in the Best Pub show. Park Sae asked the workers of Dan Bam Pub about it. All of them agreed if Dan Bam Pub became a participant in that show. They said that it was going to benefit the pub. Suddenly, Gun-soo told Park Sae that he wanted to resign from his work. He wanted to leave Dan Bam Pub because of Seo. He kept thinking about what Seo said to him back then. Seo said that if Gun-soo wanted to be with her, then he had to become the CEO of Jangda Group first. But Gun-soo told Park Sae that the reason why he wanted to leave Dan Bam Pub was because he wanted to change people's opinion about him. He said that he was sick of people thinking that he was useless and incompetent. At the prison, Seo visited Gunwon. She came there to give Gunwon all of his shares at Jangda Group. President Jang was the one who told her to do that. Seo said that Gunwon had been fired from Jangda Group. At another place, Gun-soo came to President Jang's office to meet his father. He told President Jang that he wanted to become the next CEO of Janga Group. Because of that, he planned to study management seriously. Since Gun-won didn't work at Janga Group anymore, President Jang told Soo-ah to take care of the best pub show. He also asked her to become Gun-soo's mentor. One day at Danbam Pub, Hyunhee told Tony to put MSG into the clam soup. But instead of putting MSG, Tony put curry powder into the soup. Surprisingly, that clam soup tasted so much better with curry powder. Danbam Pub then decided to make it their secret recipe. Because of that soup, Danbam Pub also became the winner in the first round of the Best Pub Show. Some big companies were curious of Danbam Pub after they saw their win in that show. They began to offer partnership with Danbam Pub. They were interested in investing in Danbam Pub. One of the CEO of those companies was called Young Myong. He was the CEO of JM Holdings. At another place, President Jang was disappointed when he found out about Danbam Pub's win in the Best Pub Show. Because Danbam Pub became the winner in that show, Janga Pub only got the second place. Gun-soo thought that getting the second place wasn't a bad thing. But President Jang explained that Janga Group was known as the best restaurant business in South Korea. So, it was important for Janga Group to get the first place. At Danbam Pub, Park Sae and the workers of Danbam Pub had a meeting. Park Sae told them that it was the perfect time for them to expand their business. He said that a big company was interested in investing in their company. With that investment, they could franchise Danbam Pub. Seo said that they had to seize this moment. She suggested that they get as many people and companies as they can to invest in their business. She also suggested them to open many franchises. But Park Sae disagreed with her. He said that it was very risky for them to open many franchises at the same time. They needed to start a franchise first because they had never done it before. Days had passed. Young Myong, the CEO of JM Holdings who wanted to invest in Danbam Pub, hadn't heard anything from Park Sae. Seo was worried if Young Myong cancelled his plan to invest in their pub because of that. Park Sae was busy displaying posters of Tony's missing father in places. Grandma Soon-rai saw that poster. She was surprised when she found out that Tony's father was from Guinea, a country in West Africa. Seo urged Park Sae to make decisions soon. She didn't understand why Park Sae hadn't called Yoon Myon yet. She even asked if Park Sae didn't trust her to manage many franchises of Danbam Pub. Park Sae finally decided to do what Seo suggested. He said that he believed in Seo. He knew that Seo could manage their business well. The next day, Park Sae and Seo came to Young Myong's office. They had a meeting there. In that meeting, Park Sae asked Young Myong to invest 5 billion won in Danbam Pub. Young Myong agreed to do that. Many people and companies were interested in investing in Danbam Pub after they found out that a big company like JM Holdings invested there. Because of that, Danbam Pub had around 10 billion won as their asset now. They used some of their money to build their office and create their own brand. 20 people had registered themselves to open Danbam Pub's franchises, meanwhile other 50 people were on the waiting list. One evening, Grandma Soon-rai met a man who tried to take his own life. She was angry at that man when she found out that he had a son. Instead of taking care of his son, he planned to kill himself. Grandma Soon-rai thought that was really unforgivable. While she was lashing out at that man, she accidentally fell and passed out. Park Sae and the others saw that incident. They took Grandma Soon-rai to the hospital immediately. Grandma Soon-rai had to be hospitalized because of that incident. The man who tried to take his own life was also at the hospital. He felt guilty when he found out that Grandma Soon-rai had to be treated at hospital. He told her that he wanted to kill himself because he thought that his son would have a better life once he was gone. Grandma Soon-rai was angry when she heard that. She said that it would only make his son sad. Tony agreed with her. He said that it was better to have a father than to have a bowl of rice. Then, Grandma Soon-rai gave some money to that man. She told him to buy some food with that money. After that, she told them about the story of her life. She said that she used to have a family. But his son left her to marry an African woman because she disapproved of their relationship. Turned out, Grandma Soon-rai's son was Tony's father. Unfortunately, when her son returned to South Korea, he had a car accident and died. Grandma Soon-rai felt guilty because she had disapproved of her son's relationship with Tony's mother. She apologized to Tony. Even though Tony had found out about the real story, he said that he didn't hate his grandma. When he was a child, his father always told him that Grandma Soon-rai really loved him. She always prioritized his son even though she had to sacrifice herself. So, he knew that his grandma was a good person. The second round of the Best Pub show finally began. After the jury tasted and judged the food that was made by the participants, they decided to choose Dan Bam Pub again as the winner. After Jangda Pub's second loss in that competition, Gun-soo began to change. He remembered what his father had said. President Jang said that Jangda Group was known as the best restaurant business in South Korea. So, if the cook of Jangda Pub couldn't bring Jangda Pub to win in that competition, then Gun-soo would fire him. After that, Gun-soo and Seo accidentally met Park Sae and Seo. Park Sae told them that he and the workers of Dan Bam Pub were going to have a drink together. He asked them to join them. When they had a drink, Sung Kwon asked them to play a game. In that game, a player would spin a bottle. The person whom the bottle pointed with stopped spinning must answer any question from other players truthfully. The first person whom the bottle pointed was Park Sae. The question that he got was when he kissed a person for the first time. Park Sae said that he had never kissed someone before. Seo smiled when she heard that. She remembered that she once kissed Park Sae when he fell unconscious. Then, Gun-soo asked if Park Sae had ever thought to have a serious relationship with Seo. Park Sae answered that he had never thought of Seo that way. He said that he only thought of Seo as his sister and co-worker. Seo wept when she heard Park Sae's answer. Then, she excused herself and left that restaurant. Hyun-hee suggested Park Sae to chase Seo soon if he really cared about her. She was mad at Gun-soo for asking such stupid question. She thought that Gun-woo was being annoying. Then, Park Sae did what Hyun-hee suggested him. Luckily, Seo was still around. Seo finally confessed her feelings to Park Sae. She asked if Park Sae had feelings for her or not. She said that she didn't need any reason from Park Sae. She only needed his answer, yes or no. Instead of answering her, Park Sae told her to stop liking him. Seo cried when she heard that. She considered what he said as a rejection. Then, she ran and left Park Sae right away. She felt her heart breaking. Seo returned to Dan Bam Pub and drank alone. She tried to calm herself down. Not long after that, Hyun-hee also returned to Dan Bam Pub. She saw Seo drinking alone and sat with her. Seo wanted to be alone, but Hyun-hee insisted on accompanying her. The next day, President Jang called Gun-soo and Seo to his office. He was mad and disappointed again because Jangda Pub didn't win in the second round of the Best Pub show. Gun-soo asked his father to entrust him with managing Jangda Pub in this show. He said that his father wouldn't be disappointed this time. At another place, Seo told Park Sae that she wanted to take a break from work. She wanted to go on vacation to relax and calm her mind. She was stressed and tired after all of those hard works that she had done all this time. At this point, Dan Bam Pub had gained many investors. Park Sae used their investments to expand his business. When President Jang's subordinate told President Jang about it, President Jang seemed calm and unbothered. A few days later, the biggest investor of Dan Bam Pub, JM Holdings, decided to cancel their investment. Because of that, many investors also canceled their investments in Dan Bam Pub. Apparently, President Jang was behind all of this. Seo felt guilty when she found out about what was happening with Dan Bam Pub. She thought that her decision had led Dan Bam Pub to this incident. At the office, Park Sae and the workers of Dan Bam Pub got frustrated. Their office was filled with many angry people who asked them to return their money. Park Sae saw Seo there. He saw Seo bringing a present from President Jang. It was a small bonsai with a ribbon on its flower pot. On that ribbon, there was a writing that said, "Know your place and be glad with what you have." Then, Park Sae told those people that it wasn't his fault that JM Holdings and other big investors canceled their investments in Dan Bam Pub. He said that before they invested in his restaurant, they had tasted the food there. So, they knew what they were doing. He told those people to cancel their investments if they wanted to. He would return all of their money. He didn't care if they invested in his company or not. He would still fight for his business no matter what, with or without any investors. After that, Park Sae left that place. Seo chased him right away. She wanted to talk to him. She asked him to forget about his resentment and planned to take revenge on Jangda Group. She asked him to end all of this and live a happy and normal life with her. Suddenly, Park Sae received a call from Seo. Seo apologized to him because she forced him to follow her suggestion. She said that it was because of her that Dan Bam Pub ended like this. Park Sae said that it was actually his own decision since he was the owner of Dan Bam Pub. He told Seo not to worry about him. He said that even though this problem looked bad, this problem wasn't enough to destroy him. He would still keep fighting until he managed to take revenge on President Jang. He thought that he could never be happy until he destroyed him. A few days later, Seo finally returned to Park Sae's office. She ended her vacation soon so she could help Park Sae to find a solution to this problem. When Seo checked the list of the investors of Danbam Pub, she saw the name of Grandma Sunrai there. Apparently, Grandma Sunrai was a rich person. She was the owner of a property business. When she invested, she only invested a lump sum of money. The next day, Grandma Sunrai came to President Jang's office to talk to President Jang. Back then, when President Jang was still struggling to build Jenga Group, Grandma Sunrai always supported him. She was the bigger investor in that company. Now, Grandma Sunrai was mad at President Jang because he kept disturbing Park Sae. She told him not to leave him alone. She owed Park Sae because Park Sae had saved her life. President Jang said that at first, he only wanted to teach Park Sae a lesson. But as time went by, he really wanted to see Park Sae apologize to him on his knees. He promised that it was his last wish in his life. Park Sae decided to close Danbam Pub for a month. During that time, Hyunhee was going to fight for Danbam Pub in the best pub show. Song Kwon would help her there. Meanwhile, Seo and Park Sae were going to looking for new investors. After all this time, Seo admitted that she still had feelings for Park Sae. Even though Park Sae didn't like her back, Park Sae didn't have any right to tell Seo about what she should do with her feelings. The next day, Minhyung drove Grandma Sunrai to Danbam Pub. Then, Park Sae, Seo, Grandma Sunrai, and Minhyung had a meeting there. Park Sae told them that he didn't need any help from anyone. Grandma Sunrai was mad when she heard that. She thought that Park Sae was being selfish. All workers of Danbam Pub were struggling and suffering during this time, but the owner of Danbam Pub himself was only thinking about his pride. Minhyung was also disappointed in Park Sae when she heard what he said. After that, Park Sae and Soo-ah had a dinner at a restaurant. When he returned to Danbam Pub, he saw Hyunhee and Sung Kwon were sleeping there. They spent the night there to prepare themselves for the best pub show. Meanwhile, Seo was still busy looking for investors. Park Sae was thinking about what he was going to do. After a while, he finally decided to call Grandma Sunrai. Turned out, Seo was already at Grandma Sunrai's house. She came there to persuade Grandma Sunrai. Park Sae called Grandma Sunrai to ask her to invest in Danbam Pub. He said that he wanted Danbam Pub to become the best restaurant business in South Korea. Grandma Sunrai was happy when she heard that. She liked Park Sae's spirit and strong will. She said that if Park Sae really wanted Danbam Pub to become the best restaurant business in South Korea, then he had to prove it. She dared him to make Danbam Pub become the winner in the best pub show. If Park Sae managed to do that, then Grandma Sunrai would invest in Danbam Pub. The next day, the best pub show was going to be held soon. Park Sae said that the future of Danbam Pub rested on Hyunhee's shoulders. He encouraged her to win in this show so that Grandma Sunrai would invest in Danbam Pub. But suddenly, the articles about Hyunhee being a transgender got viral on internet. People were talking about her after they read those articles. They even mocked and laughed at her. Because of that, Hyunhee began to feel anxious and stressful. Apparently, Gun-soo was behind all of this. He was the one who spread the information about Hyunhee. He purposely did this so Jenga Pub could become the winner in this competition. Right now, Hyunhee was feeling scared, anxious, and sad. She didn't believe in herself anymore. Park Sae saw her and tried to cheer her up. He said that Hyunhee was the most brave and beautiful woman that he had ever met in his life. Hyunhee was also strong because she didn't care about what people said about her. Park Sae said that it was okay if Hyunhee refused to make an appearance in the best pub show. It wasn't her fault. Hyunhee didn't have to convince people about who she really was. Because Danbam Pub didn't send their cook to attend the competition, Gun-soo suggested that Danbam Pub should be eliminated. But not long after that, Park Sae came to that place. He said that he was going to replace Hyunhee. At another place, Seo found out about what happened to Hyunhee. She called Hyunhee right away and tried to cheer her up by reading her a poetry. After that, Hyunhee finally decided to make an appearance in the best pub show. She had gained her confidence and power back. She was determined to bring Danbam Pub to become the winner in this competition. Hyunhee decided to confess to the public that she was a transgender. She said that the reason why she joined that competition was the people who always gave her support and encouragement. She wanted to return their favor by making them the most delicious meal in the world. The host finally announced the winner of the competition. Turned out, Hyun managed to become the winner of the best pub show. The workers of Dan Bam Pub were extremely happy when they heard that. They congratulated and hugged Hyun immediately. At another place, President Jang was very disappointed because Janga Pub lost in that competition. But he found out that Gunsu also had sly personality like him, which was willing to do anything, even a morally bad thing, to achieve his goal. He thought that it was a good thing. So, he was thinking of choosing Gunsu to become the next CEO of Janga Group. Suo agreed with President Jang. She said that Gunsu reminded her a lot of President Jang. After that, Seo came to meet Gunsu. She slapped his face right away. She was mad at Gunsu because of what he did to Hyun. Gunsu defended himself by saying that he did this to become the CEO of Janga Group. He needed to prove his love to Seo by becoming the CEO of Janga Group, just like what Seo said to him back then. Seo said that she had told him if it was only a joke. Then, she apologized to him because she couldn't like him back, not now or later when he became the CEO of Janga Group. The next day, since Dan Bam Pub managed to become the winner in the best pub show, Grandma Sunrai kept her promise to become the investor of Dan Bam Pub. It meant that Park Sae also had to keep his promise. He had to make the best restaurant business in South Korea. After Dan Bam Pub's win in the best pub show, people began to talk about the owner of Dan Bam Pub, Park Sae. Seo's mother, Young Min, also found out about their success. She now believed that her daughter was going to get both love and success. At another place, Suo saw Gunsu sitting alone in his room. She thought that Gunsu had regretted what he did. She told him that Park Sae wouldn't be destroyed no matter what Janga Group did to him. After Gunsu heard that, he was suddenly tempted to destroy Park Sae. At Dan Bam Pub, Park Sae and the workers of Dan Bam Pub were having a drink together to celebrate their win in the best pub show and their success to get a new investor. Park Sae believed that they could defeat Janga Pub now. He believed that he could realize his dream because he was surrounded by people who always supported him. A few days later, President Jang introduced Gunsu to the executives of Janga Group. He told them that Gunsu was going to become the next CEO of Janga Group. Meanwhile, Park Sae's former cellmate, Kim Hee-han, was sent to the prison again. He shared a cell with Gunwon. At this point, Dan Bam Pub had already built many franchises and an office. It meant that Park Sae had become the CEO of IC Company now. Park Sae planned to expand his business by attending the franchise expo that was going to be held in China. His goal was no longer to defeat Janga Pub and make the best restaurant business in South Korea. He wanted Dan Bam Pub to become the best restaurant in the world now. For years had finally passed. Many things had changed. Park Sae was busy doing his job as the CEO of IC Company. Seo, Sung Kwon, and Hyun had also become the executives at that company. They were still trying to expand their business in China's market. They still needed to work hard because Janga Group was still considered as the best restaurant business in South Korea. At the airport, Gunsu had just returned from his visit to Janga Group's company in the USA. His management and business skills had improved a lot. He always helped Janga Group with his brilliant strategies. He also managed to make huge profits in his company. But unfortunately, the health of President Jang was worsening. But it didn't stop him from working so hard for Janga Group. He also always warned his son about Park Sae. He was still afraid if Park Sae destroyed his company. In Park Sae's room, Seo used Park Sae's computer to shop online. She asked Park Sae to buy her a necklace. After all this time, turned out Seo still had feelings for Park Sae. On Park Sae's birthdays, Seo always gave him a birthday present. Because of that, Hyun asked what Park Sae would give to Seo for her birthday present. At another place, while Ho Jin was walking down the street, he accidentally met Gunwon. He was surprised when he saw him there. He didn't know that Gunwon had been released from the prison. Meanwhile, the health of President Jang kept worsening. One evening, he suddenly collapsed in his house. He was sent to the hospital right away. At the hospital, the doctor said that President Jang had a cancer. The cancer cells had spread throughout his body. Even his liver and lungs were severely damaged by those cancer cells. With this condition, the doctor predicted that President Jang was going to die in 6 months or less. Gunwon heard about the condition of his father. So, he came to the hospital to visit him. While Gunwon was there, Gunsu urged President Jang to choose the next CEO of Janga Group soon. He said that it was important to prevent the stock price of Jangda Group from falling. Gunwon was angry when he heard that. He thought that Gunsu was being selfish and disrespectful. Their father was dying in front of them, but Gunsu had a nerve to talk about the company. At first, President Jang was happy because Gunsu grew into a person whom he expected him to be. He thought that Jangda Group needed a leader like him. Even though Gunwon was nothing like President Jang wanted him to be, he was determined to protect and fight for Jangda Group in his own way. Park Sae finally found out that Gunwon had been released from the prison. Ho Jin reminded Park Sae again about his mission to take revenge on Jangda Group. He said that it was the perfect time for him to take action because President Jang was dying from cancer. Park Sae was surprised when he heard that. He didn't want President Jang to die easily like that. So, he called President Jang right away and pretended to cheer him up. He encouraged him to live better and happier. Then, he asked him to meet him somewhere. The next day, Park Sae, Lee Seo, Min Young, and Ho Jin had a meeting. They were thinking about creating a plan to fire President Jang before he managed to hand the company over to Gunsu. Their first plan was to fire one of the executives of Jangda Group who managed President Jang's shares in that company. After their first plan was executed, it would be easier for them to remove President Jang from Jangda Group. After that, Lee Seo would offer herself to become the manager of Jangda Group. Min Young and the others believed that Lee Seo would get that position because of her skills and experiences. The next day, President Jang came to the office. His condition seemed getting better. After Park Sae called him last night, he got his spirit and desire back to live. President Jang's subordinate told him that the newspaper had published the article about the corruption that was undertaken by an executive of Jangda Group. Because of that, President Jang had to fire that executive and find someone to replace him. President Jang thought that Park Sae was behind all of this. Meanwhile, Park Sae started to get annoyed by Lee Seo's attitude. He felt really guilty because he couldn't like her back. Lee Seo realized that Park Sae began to think of her as a woman, not just as a sister or co-worker. In order to become a manager of Jangda Group, Lee Seo worked and studied so hard. Min Young introduced her to some important people at Jangda Group so she could have many supports there. Every day Lee Seo worked so hard until she got a nosebleed. One day, Lee Seo stumbled upon Gunsu. Since they hadn't seen each other for a long time, they planned to hang out together. At another place, Park Sae was going on a date with Suo. Suo told Park Sae that she had bought a house. She also asked him to have a serious relationship with her. Park Sae wasn't sure about what he had to do. Not long after that, Lee Seo and Gunsu also arrived at that place. Lee Seo was mad when she saw them there. So, she left that place right away. When Park Sae saw that, he was getting more confused about his feelings. He finally decided to leave Suo and chase Lee Seo. Unfortunately, Park Sae couldn't find Lee Seo anywhere. He could only find Gunsu there. Gunsu thought that Park Sae was only using Lee Seo. It was because Park Sae couldn't like Lee Seo back, but he didn't have any courage to tell her to leave because Lee Seo was very important for IC Company. Meanwhile, Suo realized that Park Sae didn't like her anymore. She realized that it was Lee Seo that Park Sae liked now. The next day, Lee Seo wasn't feeling well. But she still came to work to attend a meeting that was going to be held by the shareholders of Jangda Group. Because of that, she finally collapsed during that meeting. She was sent to the hospital immediately. She had to be treated there for a few days. Meanwhile, at the office, the meeting was still being held. Min Young was disappointed when she found out that the shareholders of Jangda Group decided to reject Lee Seo to become the manager of Jangda Group. Apparently, before the meeting was being held, President Jang and Gunsu called a shareholder of Jangda Group's company in the USA. They asked him to support him in that meeting. Because of his help, President Jang finally managed to have more supports from the shareholders. Not long after that, Park Sae came to the hospital to visit Lee Seo. Lee Seo found out that she had been rejected by Jangda Group. She was mad because of that. Park Sae told her not to worry about that and take a proper rest instead. He threatened to fire her if she insisted on leaving the hospital now. After that, Park Sae and Sung Kwon left Lee Seo's room. Park Sae told Sung Kwon that he was feeling sad and confused now. He had no idea if he had to choose Lee Seo or Suo. Sung Kwon suggested him to follow his heart. While Park Sae was heading home, he saw the necklace that Lee Seo liked. He decided to buy that necklace for Lee Seo. When he returned to the hospital to give that necklace to Lee Seo, he secretly listened to Lee Seo and Hyun-ee's conversation. Lee Seo told Hyun-ee that she had been confessing her feelings to Park Sae lately. She said that she didn't care if Seo was annoyed by that and decided to fire her. She admitted that she worked hard all this time because she wanted Park Sae to need her. It was her only way to be close to Park Sae. A few days later, the inauguration of the new CEO of Jangda Group was going to be held soon. In President Jang's room, President Jang told Seo that he was dying. Seo was sad and surprised when she heard that. President Jang knew that Seo despised him. So, he wondered why Seo was crying when she found out about his condition. All this time, President Jang had been always careful about people whom he kept close to him. He only chose people whom he could easily control and manipulate. Usually, those people came from lower socioeconomic status, like Seo. At another place, Kim Hee-hoon agreed to work with Gunwon. Gunwon asked Hee-hoon to work with him to execute his plan. At the office, while Seo was being treated in the hospital, Park Sae and Sung Kwon decided to do Seo's work. While Sung Kwon was going through some documents in Seo's room, he accidentally found a poetry that was made by Seo. That poetry reminded Park Sae of his journey with Seo. He finally realized that he had feelings for her. He then decided to go to the hospital to meet Seo. When he arrived at the hospital, he saw Gun-soo there. Gun-soo also came to the hospital to visit Seo. Gun-soo and Park Sae then had a conversation. Gun-soo admitted that he still had feelings for Seo. He said that Seo was the reason why he left Dan Bam Pub and planned to become the CEO of Jangda Group. He even planned to destroy IC Company because of Seo. Park Sae told him that he was no longer thinking of Seo as a sister and co-worker. He admitted that he had feelings for Seo too. He didn't care if it hurt Gun-soo. When Seo went to Seo's room, he couldn't find Seo there. Suddenly, he received a message and found out that Seo had been kidnapped. In that message, the kidnapper told Park Sae to come to Panji alone. When Gun-soo saw Park Sae panicked and rushed out of the hospital, he realized that something bad had happened. So, he decided to follow Park Sae's car. Park Sae finally arrived at the meeting place. He met a group of people who were kidnapping Seo there. Gun-soo also got out of his car and met them. Apparently, Gunwon was behind all of this. Gun-soo was furious when he found out about that. Suddenly, a car came and tried to hit Gun-soo. But Park Sae saved him by pushing his body away. But unfortunately, he had to be the one who got hit by the car. Gun-soo was shocked when he saw that. He tried to call Sung Kwon, but Gunwon and his gang beat him right away. Even though Hee-hoon was Park Sae's friend, he had to do this to him because he needed money. Following that incident, Park Sae had to be hospitalized because he was badly injured. Since he was the CEO of IC Company, the news about him being hospitalized were soon broadcasted by all television channels in South Korea. But to avoid public panic, Sung Kwon refused to tell the media about what really happened. He only told the truth to Byong. He asked Byong to report this incident to the police soon. Meanwhile, he was going to go somewhere to make sure about something. He knew that Hee-hoon and his gang were behind all of this because he saw Hee-hoon at the parking before. In his office, President Jang also found out about the incident that happened to Park Sae. He tried to call Gun-soo, but there was no answer. Apparently, Seo and Gun-soo were being locked away in a room. When Hee-hoon and his gang were gone, Seo tried to untie the rope that was tied around her hands. Hee-hoon was asking the rest of the money that Gunwon had to pay him. He said that Gunwon had to pay expensive for this because he had to ruin his friendship with Park Sae because of this. Gunwon laughed when he heard that. He said that Hee-hoon had to do what he wanted to do first if he wanted to get the rest of the money. Sung Kwon finally arrived at that place. He came there to meet Hee-hoon. He knew about that place because he used to be a member of Hee-hoon's gang. At the hospital, Park Sae fell into a coma. In his subconscious, he saw his father in the park. He cried and hugged his father. It felt like he was in the past because he was wearing his high school uniform. Meanwhile, Sung Kwon was still insistent on entering that place. Because of that, the gangsters who guarded that place beat him up. Sung Kwon said that he would report them to the police for attacking him. Even though he was an ex-convict, it would be easy for him to report them to the police because of his status as a manager of IC Company. After that, Sung Kwon went to the police station to report Hee-hoon and his gang. He called Seo and asked her to come to that place to help him. Hyun came with Seo. She saw Sung Kwon's injured face. She scolded Sung Kwon because he didn't fight back when he was beaten up. Then, Sung Kwon met Hee-hoon at the parking. Sung Kwon said that he was disappointed in Hee-hoon because of what he did to Park Sae. He didn't remember that Hee-hoon had done something like this before. He threatened to get Hee-hoon into trouble if something bad happened to Seo and Gun-soo. After that, before Sung-kwon left that place, he gave a document from the police to Soo-ah. The next day, Soo-ah gave that document to President Jang. She told him that Gun-won was the one who had hit Park Sae with a car and kidnapped Gun-soo and Seo. President Jang was surprised when he heard that. Soo-ah said that President Jang needed to prepare himself to protect Janga Group because it was a serious case. If the public knew about this case, it was possible that Janga Group would fall and go bankrupt. At another place, Seo finally managed to untie the rope that was tied around her hands. Then, she helped Gun-soo to untie the rope that was tied around his hands too. She said that they had to run away from that place immediately. In President Jang's room, Soo-ah finally decided to leave Janga Group. She gave her resignation letter to President Jang. She said that she had collected some evidence and documents about the corruption that was undertaken by Janga Group. She warned President Jang to prepare himself before the situation worsened. Apparently, Soo-ah did all of this for Manager Park. Manager Park had treated her really well in the past, so she wanted to return the favor. Back then, when Manager Park said that he wanted to send Soo-ah to university and pay her college tuition, Soo-ah promised that she would pay him 3 times the amount of money he gave her. Since Soo-ah couldn't give him money anymore, she decided to do this. At the hospital, Park Sae still fell into coma. He was still wandering around his subconscious with his father. Then, Park Sae and his father stopped at the bridge. Park Sae's father said that Park Sae could let go all of his pain and burdens by crossing that bridge with him. Park Sae was tempted to do that, but he suddenly remembered about Seo. He said that he couldn't go with his father because he had things to do in real world. Before Park Sae left that place, he hugged his father and said that he really missed him. But Park Sae said that starting from now on, he would let his father go. Even though he couldn't meet his father anymore, he would always remember his father. His father would be in his heart forever. Park Sae's father was touched when he heard that. He was proud of him. He asked Park Sae to keep living like that. After that, he left Park Sae and crossed that bridge. After his father was gone, Park Sae woke up from his coma. But suddenly, he wept bitterly. Sung-kwon rushed to Park Sae's room immediately. He was surprised when he saw Park Sae crying. It was the first time for him to see him cry. In his room, President Jang received a call from Gun-won. Gun-won told him that he did all of this because he wanted to make his father proud. He said that his dream in this life was only to make his father happy, but everything went wrong when Park Sae appeared in his life. But now, he planned to end all of this. He was going to end himself and Park Sae. President Jang was the only person who knew about Gun-won's whereabouts. He could stop this if he wanted to. But it meant that he had to get rid of his son again. While Gun-won was entering Seo and Gun-soo's room, his head was suddenly hit by Gun-soo. He fell and passed out right away. Seo and Gun-soo used the moment to run away from that room. At the hospital, Park Sae told Soo-ah that he was going to save Seo. After all, it was him that Gun-won actually targeted, not Seo. Soo-ah tried to stop him because Park Sae had just woken up from coma. He still needed to take a rest. But Park Sae didn't listen to her. He needed to save Seo because he loved her. At another place, Seo and Gun-woo were trying to run away from that place. But suddenly, Hee-hoon and his gang arrived there. Seo and Gun-woo were caught by them. Park Sae came to President Jang's place to meet President Jang. President Jang was confused about what he was going to do. He asked himself about the purpose in his life. He finally decided that he wouldn't get rid of Gun-won again. He was going to protect him. Suddenly, Park Sae knelt down before President Jang. He begged him to tell him about Seo's whereabouts. Because Park Sae had knelt down in front of him, President Jang finally decided to get rid of Gun-won. Then, Park Sae admitted that President Jang was a great businessman. Even though Park Sae disagreed with President Jang's life principle, he admitted that he had been always looking up to him all this time. He said that he regretted what he did. He had wasted so much time by holding a grudge against President Jang. His plan to take revenge on President Jang only led him to destruction. Meanwhile, Seo and Gun-soo were trying to fight Hee-hoon and his gang. But suddenly, Seo decided to stop fighting and run away from them. Because of that, Gun-soo had to fight them by himself. Gun-soo kept being stabbed and attacked by Hee-hoon's gang, but he chose to stay. He decided to sacrifice himself for Seo. Meanwhile, Seo kept running away to save herself. Hee-hoon and Gun-won chased her immediately. Park Sae and Sung-kwon finally arrived at that place. Park Sae's car sped toward Hee-hoon's car. their cars finally collided. Sung Kwon got out of his car immediately and beat up Hee-hoon and his subordinate. He told Park Sae to take Lee-seo away from that place. While Park Sae and Lee-seo were running away, Park Sae suddenly confessed his feelings for Lee-seo. Gun-won ran away from Sung Kwon and chased Park Sae and Lee-seo. There was no way for him to let Park Sae go. Park Sae told Lee-seo to leave without him because the police would arrive there soon. He needed to stay and beat up Gun-won to buy time. Sung Kwon was busy beating up the rest of Hee-hoon's gang, including Hee-hoon. Even though Hee-hoon was his former boss, he wasn't afraid to beat him black and blue. Meanwhile, Park Sae was struggling to fight Gun-won, but he finally managed to defeat him. Not long after that, the police arrived at that place. The next day, Seo submitted the evidence of the corruption and embezzlement that were committed by Jangda Group. Following that action, President Jang was called by the judiciary to be interrogated. Meanwhile, Park Sae was sent to the hospital again. He still needed to receive intensive treatment because of his health condition. Jangda Group was going to receive serious punishment for the corruption, embezzlement, kidnapping, and attempted murder that they had committed. President Jang couldn't do anything to protect his company anymore. He had to accept that Jangda Group was going to fall soon. The executives of Jangda Group had also decided to sell their company. It would be difficult for them to find a company that was willing to buy their company. But turned out, there was a company that wanted to buy Jangda Group with high price. Because of the kidnapping and attempted murder that he had committed, Gun-won had to be sent to the prison again. Ho Jin came to the prison to talk to him. He told him that he finally realized his dream to destroy Gun-won and Jangda Group. Min-young was going to work at the main company of Jangda Group again. Because of that, Byung and Haewon couldn't see her every day anymore. It seemed that Byung and Min-young had feelings for each other. Min-young even accepted Byung's offer to drive her home with his truck. In his room, President Jang was still trying to save Jangda Group. He called all powerful and important people whom he knew to ask for help. But unfortunately, nobody wanted to help him. Then, Gun-soo reminded his father about what he said to him back then. His father once told him that the strong preyed on the weak. Now that they were weak, they had to face the consequence to be preyed on by the strong. But President Jang still didn't give up. He called Grandma Sunrai to ask her for help. Back then, Grandma Sunrai was willing to help Jangda Group because President Jang told her that he couldn't see his family suffer. Now, even though Jangda Group was going to be taken over by Park Sae, President Jang and his family wouldn't suffer. So, Grandma Sunrai couldn't help President Jang anymore. Before she ended her call, she told President Jang that Park Sae would become a better leader for Jangda Group than him. A few days later, President Jang came to Dan Bem Pub to talk to Park Sae. During his visit, Park Sae gave him special service and special menu of Dan Bem Pub. He said that he learned the special recipe of that food from his father. With some seasoning that were added to that food tasted so much better than the original recipe. Then, Park Sae told President Jang that he was going to take over Jangda Group. But Min-young was going to be the next CEO of Jangda Group. He also planned to change the name of Jangda Group. President Jang couldn't do anything to stop Park Sae because he didn't have any power anymore. He could only agree with all of his decisions. Then, he knelt down in front of Park Sae. He apologized to him for everything that he had done to him. Even though Park Sae had been wanting President Jang to do that all this time, in fact he didn't feel happy. He realized that President Jang was trying to change his mind. But he said that he wouldn't change his mind no matter what happened. He had to think and act like a businessman because he was a businessman. A few days later, a meeting was being held by Park Sae and the shareholders of Jangda Group. In that meeting, Park Sae announced that starting from that day, he had officially taken over Jangda Group. After that, Park Sae and Gun-soo had a conversation. Gun-soo said that he decided to leave Jangda Group. He confessed about all the wrongdoings that he had committed all this time to achieve his goal. Park Sae decided to forgive him. He said that it was normal for Gun-soo to make mistakes because he was still a child. He told Gun-soo to keep learning and doing better. Then, Park Sae received a call from Seo. Seo congratulated him for his success of taking over Jangda Group. She said that she was going to live in her own way now. She hoped that Park Sae would keep supporting her as a friend. Before she ended her call, she asked Park Sae to live happily. At another place, Tawny planned to go to the movie theater with his crush. But he was sad because his crush canceled their date. Apparently, Tawny had also improved a lot. He could speak English now. That evening, Gun-soo came to meet Hyun-e. He apologized to her for what he had done to her back then. Then, Gunsu came to meet Seo. He told her that he was going to go to the USA. Seo gave him a hug. She apologized to Gunsu because she had used him. She knew that Gunsu had feelings for her back then, but she used that for her personal purpose. One day, Hyuni and Seo visited an owner of a restaurant for a business. They were surprised when they found out that the owner of that restaurant was Suo. Instead of talking about business, Seo told her that she was dating Park Sae now. Suo smiled when she heard that. She told Seo to take care of Park Sae. That day, Suo's restaurant was hiring. A good-looking man came to her restaurant to apply as a cook. After that man finished doing his cooking test, Suo tasted the meal that he made. She said that she really liked the food. It seemed that she also liked the cook. Suo finally decided to accept that man to work at her restaurant. At another place, Sung-kwon used Tony's tickets to go to the movie theater. He asked Hyuni to go with him. Meanwhile, Park Sae and Seo were having fun in Itaewon. Seo told Park Sae that she wanted to heal his wound. She wanted to help Park Sae to forget his pain and have a beautiful and sweet life. After that very long journey, Park Sae finally could be happy again.